Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Let's go. G'day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Your support sure means a heck of a lot. My guest on this episode is Matthew Sanjari. Matthew is an entrepreneur and a former pastor who coaches other entrepreneurs and business leaders. Matthew has a real focus on practical strategies for scaling businesses and achieving personal growth. We had an awesome chat, and it was really cool to talk about knowing your why we do stuff, stripping the layers down to the real essence of why it is that we do what we do. Enjoy this one, guys. Let's get into it. Was entrepreneurship something that sort of felt naturally inclined to you when you were young, or was it more the things that happened along your journey that led you to where you are now, empowering businesses and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always wanted to branch off and do my own thing. But I think until that moment where I went through personal tragedy that kind of forced me into entrepreneurship, I just don't know that I would have left. I would have had the fortitude to launch out and take that big step. I'd always dabbled some side hustles here and all that, but 12 years ago, I don't know that I had it in me fully to go and just cut bait. And what I'm doing now is honestly a result of the fact that that accident, that personal tragedy got me into entrepreneurship, different layers of it, starting multiple businesses. And all the lessons I've learned from there took me to a place where I said, as I started talking to more people, I was like, wow, okay, so the things that I had to learn and the things that I had to put into practice are things that almost everyone struggles with. So how can I help empower them too?
Yeah, so it was almost like the rug was pulled out from under you, but that in turn gave you the kind of hard lessons that you needed to really take things into your own hands.
100%. And listen, I would never wish what happened to me, Daniel, on anyone. But at the same time, I don't know that I would have changed it for the world, right? Like you so eloquently put, the rug got pulled from under me, and it forced me into this place where, okay, well, I've got to become an entrepreneur. I have to provide for myself. I need to create. And I learned really, really quickly in that being good at sales or even being good at marketing doesn't make you a great business person. And I spent the first 3 years of my business utterly failing. Like I'm talking barely making it, barely putting food on the table. And it was in that time that I learned so many of the life lessons that now when I sit with clients, when I'm doing public speaking, that I recognize when I hit those pain points that people go, yeah, that's me. I'm there. And I can empathize with them.
So what got you through those times when things just didn't seem to be progressing and you were having these failures or the lessons as you call them? What kept you moving forward?
Yeah, they say the definition of insanity is just going round and round doing the same thing. And I think for me, I came to this place where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot keep going and hoping for a different outcome. And because of the accident that I had, it left me with multiple injuries, a disability. And so I would spend a lot of time in bed, a lot of time just immobilized, unable to move, unable to do anything. And it was during that time that I basically, I went through a grieving period where I said, I had this great job, I had this great future and all this potential. And then I felt like the rug got taken from me. And now I have this new opportunity that's not panning out. And I really had to go find what my why was. I had to go discover why I was even doing what I was doing in the first place. And I don't say that from this philosophical, let's pontificate. I meant, at the end of the day, making money wasn't good enough for me. You're trying to build a career wasn't good enough for me. The idea that I physically and mentally at times didn't have it in me to continue, and I needed to figure a way out, not just for my health and my longevity, but for the people around me. That really helped drive me, and it helped push me because I, I have this theory that it's unfortunate, but oftentimes, when we get backed into a wall, when we get backed into a corner, put up against the wall, we actually see what we're made of. Um, and for me, that's what it took. And so in that moment, finding my why for that season is what really helped push me into, you know what, I'm not wired to build systems. I'm not wired to get into the nitty gritty. I'm a big picture A type. Let's run 1,000 miles an hour and we'll figure it out later. But I had to slow down and I had to figure it out because no one was coming to save me.
Man, the why is massive. Like I can really relate to that. Doing this show, I realize we're kind of all far more alike than we are different. And I had that too, where it was just like repeating the same outcomes until I got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's just repeating itself over and over again. What is my why? You know, and starting trying to align things more with the why, exactly as you say. Um, yeah, it's a massive one. If there isn't, and I think in schools it's not taught enough as well. I think, you know, it's just learn this, learn this, learn this, but where's the why? Like that's what I struggled with. It was like, why? How is this going to like benefit, as opposed to just you need to learn this?
Oh, I love it. You know, one of the things that I've really come to learn is that, you know, in my circles, and I'm sure it's probably similar to you know, we've all heard the term find your why, right? Whether it's Simon Sinek's book or, you know, we've listen to podcasts, whatever. But I think for me in that moment, I had to come to this place where I was like, just finding my why from a surface level wasn't good enough. And so I had to go down this road, which I didn't really know at the time would end up benefiting me and my clients and down the road. But it basically was this idea that I want to go 5 layers deep. 5 layers deep for me, if I can get my why figured out there, I'm probably going to actually get to what it is. And what I mean by that is, okay, why do I want to start a business? I'll ask that question to people and they'll say, well, I want to make $1 million. And I'll say, great. That's just not a good enough why, right?
Mm.
Because when you hit $1 million, what's next, right? Or you know, when you have no time with your family, or you're stressed, or it's compromised your health. So let's keep going. Why do you want $1 million? Oh, well, I want financial freedom. Okay, why? I want financial freedom because I want to be able to spend more time with my family. Why? And it's usually at this third part, Daniel, that I really start to see people either get annoyed with me or they start to crack, one of the two. And it's at this point, though, realistically, they start to tap into an emotional why. And that's the why I'm looking for, where I go, why do you want to spend time with your family? And they go, it's because my parents were busy working and they didn't get to spend a lot of time with me. And I resolved that I didn't want to do that with my family. Why? Because it's a value that I didn't get to experience. That's your why. And now in that simple exercise, which you know will bring up emotions and it's can be a little uncomfortable, I help people go down this journey where I say, if you don't find that why, you would have built to $1 million in a potentially in a really unhealthy way. You may have carried on the same way. You may have worked 80 hours a week, done whatever to get to $1 million. But your real why is that you value time with your loved ones. And so let's make sure that we build you a business or an organization that we can still get to $1 million. Let's do it in a way that has layers of separation that respects your why and that feed out of that.
I love that you get to the core of it. You just keep chipping away, getting beneath the surface stuff right down to the. And you're right, it ends up going back to like a sort of core issue or some underlying thing, which might be uncomfortable, but I guess it's about leaning into that discomfort, like you've said. Were you were you a pastor at some point as well? I read.
Yeah, I was. I pastored for over 14 years, I think it was. Helped start a church and yeah, incredible experience.
How has that informed you in terms of what you're doing now?
Yeah, honestly, in so many ways. You know, it's funny. I've pastored. I built a marketing company that I had an exit from, built a real estate company, and now I'm doing what I'm doing. It doesn't really matter. I've learned what the skin was at the end of the day, what the window dressing was. It was always the same, and that was I love working with people and seeing them reach their full potential. And I think on the pastoring side, one of the things that I'm going to be honest, I carry over in my current work now as a business coach and consultant is that I learned what it meant to just care about people without any inclination of a transaction going on. right?
Mm.
That there was no benefit for me, whether these people, um, obviously I hope that they would come to church. I would hope that they would progress in their lives, but there wasn't necessarily a monetary benefit for me. I was on a salary or I was a volunteer at different points. And so I learned what it meant to actually just care for people regardless of the outcome, be detached from the outcome. And I think that's one of the things that, has really carried over now in my current line of work, and it's helped me build businesses. It's this idea that if I can help build people and I help build a system that cares for them holistically, the outcome will come, right? I love to use the analogy of we don't go up to a plant and scream, grow, get taller. No, we water it, we give it sunlight. And naturally, even when we're frustrated, we make adjustments because we know that with time and travel and the right practice, we'll get to where we want to be. And so I think pastoring in so many ways informed me of this idea that, hey, if we just take care of people, it's actually people that build businesses. I love AI, I love the technology that's coming out, but every business was built on someone's idea. And so, in so many ways, to the degree that we care about people, and the degree that we treat them well, to the degree we'll see our businesses grow and our organizations succeed.
For sure. And I've seen that present in different size businesses where toxic cultures can kind of creep in, and it can happen in a number of ways. But sometimes it's just it's as you say, where's the care and compassion towards our fellow colleagues, regardless of hierarchy, coming at things that aren't in a non-transactional, unconditional way, whether it's business or personal relationships. I think that speaks for a lot, because if you're in a company and you're just being, they're just drawing everything out of you, and you don't feel heard. What are some of the common problems that you see that can kind of develop a toxic work culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I think owners and leaders need to recognize that culture doesn't happen by accident, right? And so if you don't design the kind of culture that you want to see happen and you live that out, then it's going to happen by default. And so many times, again, these things happen by default. And so, like I was saying earlier, no one sets out to create a toxic culture. But because of default and because things get missed, that's how they get into these situations. So a great remedy is to start doing things by design. And that may mean, just from personal experience, and I draw this in the pastoral side, is, hey, taking people out for coffee, celebrating birthdays, making sure that there's staff appreciation, making sure that there's time and space for life. Obviously we're here usually to run a business, or for nonprofits, organizations, whatever, but giving people the allowance to live. And it's amazing how that shift in culture, you'll see people go the extra mile for you, and it's really going to help benefit you in the long run.
I love the term design. It's like it's very intentional. There's nothing. It's very practical. Like, how can you design the culture as opposed to just sort of let it grow in some random way? Like, actually be focused and design it. That's pretty cool. Um, how do you find your public speaking, and do you have what are some of the tools you use for public speaking to for presentation? Do you have a way to sort of ground yourself?
Yeah, honestly, I've found the best way that I can really engage and connect with people is I put myself in the audience. I try and put myself into, okay, what are the problems that we're all going through? I like to frame it this way. At the end of the day, there's no shortage of content there. There's no shortage of information. You can go on ChatGPT now, right? You can go on Google, you can ask it questions and you can find answers. So, when I'm speaking, it's not so much that I'm trying to give people information. What I want to do is I want to connect to their heart. I want to connect to their emotions, right? Because they can go find that information anywhere. So what I want to do, and whether that's through storytelling, whether that's through, just being authentic and, letting people into my story, I want to find a way to connect with people on a level that makes them be able to place themselves in my talk. or place themselves in my story. Because again, it's the framework that I use where I say, I am not the expert. You're the expert. You're in control of your own life. You're in control of your own business. What I'm here to do is potentially and hopefully bring the gold to the surface that's always been inside of you. And so in public speaking and in my public speaking, I found if I can get people to engage with their heart and I can get them to go, oh, that's me. Oh, I can totally relate to that. Then I think we've got a great opportunity. And, sometimes I'll bring presentations into that in terms of like a graphic or things like that. But more often than not, I don't. I like to use engaging methods, whether that's getting people to physically use their bodies. I may have them do something where they put their hands up, anything to get them engaged. Because if I can get them engaged, then I can speak to their heart and their emotions.
I think we crave that as well. We crave that connection. You're right. All the information's there, but we crave it in a real authentic way. So yeah. Um, it's a it's a tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of challenge. It could be anything related to what we've been discussing or in terms of entrepreneurship or just something you do on a daily basis. Is there something that springs to mind? Maybe for somebody who's struggling, in those down times we've talked about where it's hard to just put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, that's really, really good. I think one of the things that I love to challenge people with is, especially on the business side, but this works in life. And it's this idea that, because I had it happen to me. If you got knocked out of your business or out of your life for 30 days, what would you come back to? And oftentimes I'll ask that question, there'll be silence, there's a little bit of panic, both on the business and the personal side from a leadership perspective, because people will often go, well, I don't think I'd come to much. I don't think I'd come back to much of my business. And on the personal level, a lot of people would be worried about my finances would be out of order. My house would be, in disarray. Maybe some of my relationship would be topsy turvy. And I go, man, well, that's a great indicator that maybe you need some systems in your life, right? And I don't say that in a way that we need to micromanage people or everything needs to be laid out A to Z. I mean more for me, I came from a place where, and full disclosure, I still go through this. I haven't beat my diagnosis yet. It's been 12 years. But I would go through things where, I'd get knocked up for 3 weeks. And the next thing you know, I come out and, there's garbage everywhere and, food's gone bad and, my relationships are suffering because I was knocked up for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I can't look at a screen. 3 weeks, I got knocked out. And, in our world today, things are happening to people. People are battling, mental health stuff. They're battling a lack of motivation. You don't get to decide medically what happens to you sometimes. And so I think it's leaving people with this challenge, this framework. Okay, so if you were to disappear for 30 days and you came back, what would you come back to? So now all the things that first come to mind, those are the things that I want to start to put systems in. If you're worried about your relationships, how can you do your relationships different? How can you let people into your life a little differently? If it's your business you're worried about, how do you create layers of separation so that someone else is carrying that as well? There's so many different ways, but I love that challenge. I love asking that question because it's also going to help you determine what your priorities are. What you may think you know what your priorities are, but the answer to the question, what would you come back to, usually brings to the surface, oh my gosh, my family, or oh my gosh, my bank account. And you'll find out pretty quickly what your priorities actually are.
It's a very unique question because, like you said earlier, with the layers, getting to the layers of the why, it's kind of an exposition. It gets to the core of stuff. It's a very unique way of getting to the core. And yeah, the systems and routines are just so important. I've just found, like, as a creative, I've just found how beneficial routine is for me. I used to operate in quite a chaotic kind of way. Like there was kind of, and it was actually like with my son, I realized he wasn't aware when Papa was working and when he wasn't. My creative work just sort of blended into weekends, and I could, when I saw how confused he was, I was like, well, actually, for quality of time, I need to rein that in a bit, and also for myself, so that I know that there's distinct blocks of times that are focused and committed to certain things, but then there's other blocks of time that, are purely just trying to be present with family. And it's benefited me a lot. And it sounds quite simple, but, as a kind of creative, I had to really get some of those, rein some of that stuff in. It's helped a lot.
Honestly, I've been there. So I'm a fellow creative, a musician, and and so when I was pastoring, I led a team of creatives. At one point, there was probably 60, 70 creatives on my team. And I don't know if you went down this road, but I would hear these excuses. I would make these excuses. Well, that's just not, there's times to be creative and, I can't really control that. And while that may be true, I think one of the biggest things I recognized was systems and structures don't have to stifle my spontaneity. They can actually allow me to create in a more focused, better way. And I think oftentimes we confuse spontaneity and creativity with chaos. There's a very fine line. And so by putting in what are those basic routines that are going to bring out the best in me? Well, if they're bringing out the best in me, they're going to bring out the best creativity in me also. And so I totally resonate with that. And I've been there.
It's spot on. It's like if you have a weekend where you're in a kind of haze of I should be working, but you're not actually working and you're sort of somewhere in limbo land. And then when it comes to Monday, you're not going to be fresh and ready to go. It's like if you actually take the weekend to like just completely be focused on other things, then like you say, when you get back on the Monday, you're charged, you're ready to go again. So like doing less can sometimes feel counterproductive, but it actually can really benefit. What instrument do you play? Are you a singer or
No, piano,
piano?
piano, keyboard, synth. I mean, I started on piano, started classical, and then I went down the road of learning, everything from a tech side and playing, virtual instruments. And so just, I love that world. Not definitely nowhere near as accomplished as you, but I love that world.
I just yeah, music. Music is just such a it can just help in so many ways at whatever level you're playing it. It's never too late to pick up an instrument. Um, is there a piece of art, like a film or a book, that had a major impact on you?
Oh, it's a great question. I'm sure there is, but nothing's coming to mind right now.
It's funny
I,
how
I,
some
I think one thing, sorry, you go ahead.
sometimes books present when they need to, but in this sort of space, especially sort of personal development, I found like books kind of present, and then you read that thing and you recommend it to someone else, and they just don't sort of get it, but it's presented to it's obviously presented to you at the right time. So there's stuff like that. But is there any like anything really, movies or series or songs that you can remember having an impact on you at a typical a stage of life? Or
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things, and it goes back to the public speaking we were talking about, more than the art, I find I connect with the artist. I find, like I'll take Whitney Houston as an example. I love Whitney's music; she's fantastic. But when I went into her story and understood, tried to understand the hardship and what she was up against in so many ways, it gave me this context, and it actually inspired me in so many ways that it actually opened up her music to be more inspiring in terms of my creativity. And so at the end of the day, for me, there will be bits and pieces of movies and music and different things to pick out. But when I immerse myself in the story of the artist and why they wrote that song, I love that stuff. And that's the stuff that speaks to me because I hear these stories of hardship and they can give me hope, or, they can also just give me a context as to why that person wrote that, what their framework was. And oftentimes I'll try and relate that to my own life. And I'll say, okay, well, if they were doing this, I may not be in the same situation, but this has elements of that. How can I turn this into something? How can I create from this, right? Instead of going down this road, which I think we all do as creatives, this idea that, okay, well, I'm just not in the mood. Or you know what, things are too hard right now, or they're too easy, or they're going too well, or whatever the reason is. And the more I understand and get to know some of these creators, the more I feel like I'm more versatile in my creativity because I'm, yeah, there is a song or there's art in every season, in every situation. The question then becomes for me, do I want to tap into that? But there's no shortage of material.
I agree with you, man. That's really interesting in itself. Like the story behind the artist, and it's easy for people to kind of spruik things, but for me, and that's what I'm trying to do with this show. It's like if you know somebody's backstory and you know where they've come from, and then they have some perspective, I think that holds a lot more weight than just somebody kind of mansplaining or whatever you want to call it without anything behind it. Yes, I'm always fascinated in the artist and their story as well, and the the struggle that we all have in different shapes, you know.
Totally. And I think it relates back on the public speaking side. It's like, there's no shortage of content. There's no shortage of art. There's no shortage of music. But I think people are craving, they're desperate to connect with things because truthfully, I think it speaks to the selfish desire in all of us where we want to place ourselves as the hero or the heroine in a story. And so I think naturally we all want to be able to connect with something. And we all gravitate towards things that we can connect with and we can place ourselves in the story. And so to me, that context is a huge part for me.
There's another thing to artistry that sort of speaks to entrepreneurship as well. Like this idea of the struggling artist, I think, is actually a little bit flawed when as an artist you gain all these tools that can actually help you in business because you're out there like, particularly just from my experience in bands, it was like booking the shows, making the artwork, playing the actual drums. I didn't realize all this stuff was kind of informing me as kind of in an entrepreneurial way as well. So I think the artistry informs what we do in business. But like you've said, all these things you've done, there's parallels between them, and they inform, your desire to connect and raise people up, which is a very cool thing.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? They all have layers, like we've both been saying. It's just a matter of do you want to commit to the layers? I've got a good friend who, incredible musician, and he's been part of a band, and they've had some success, and now they want to go to the next level, and they're recognizing, okay, well, with every layer comes different responsibility, right? At one point they were in the season where they're like, we just love songwriting, we don't care, we'll just get together and we'll just jam and we'll just songwrite. And then they went to another phase where they're like, well, we want to play shows. Oh man, that's going to take a brand identity. That's going to take some organizational structure. And then it was, oh, and now we want our music to go to a bigger audience and we want to play bigger shows. Okay, well, that's going to take a bank account and that's going to take some management. And and again, it's not that any of these things are bad things. I think it's understanding that with every layer that you add on, there are different complexities. And I think that's true in life, it's true in art and creativity, and it's true in business, right? You could be the solopreneur. And, I know some very successful solopreneurs who, with three pieces of software have made a great living. And then the moment that they want to venture up, they've got to realize, oh no, I've got to bring on an employee, and that employee might need health benefits, and that employee might need, protection, contracts, or training. And again, none of these things are bad things, nor are they good things necessarily. They're just things. And every layer that you unlock, that you're willing to commit to, it's going to unlock that measure of risk reward. So.
Commitment is massive. Commitment's a huge one. I learned it in the martial arts. Um, it's kind of cliche that you take things from martial arts into real life, but when I was having these like altercation or having these sequence of face-offs or whatever you want to call it in the martial arts, it was like whenever I committed, whether I always came off better than when I went in half. You know, it wasn't necessarily like a call it a win or whatever, but it was always better when I fully committed. So I started to take that into life, and it's like without kind of judgment, it's like how can I commit to things? So I like that you're using that term. You commit. There's more challenges there, but that come with that commitment. But if the commitment's there, it's always going to teach you something.
Yeah, I love the line. Passion will start something, but commitment sees it through, right? We've all been passionate. We've all gone down these limbs of, I'm going to start a side hustle, or, I'm going to pick up an instrument. And that passion will last for so long. That fire will burn for so long. But then life happens. And, while it's our job to keep that flame going, the truth is life happens, right? It's natural that the ebbs and flows of life. I am less passionate about piano in music than I was 5 years ago. And you know what? That'll probably change as well. But my commitment to it either can't change or it's got to increase. Otherwise, I'm going to fall behind. I'm going to lose access. And so, passion is great, it gets you started, but it's actually the commitment that allows you to see something from the beginning to the end.
And I would add to that consistency, following the commitment. Try and be as consistent as possible.
Love
Where
it.
can people find you?
Yeah. So, you can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. My name, Matthew Sanjari, Sanjari, LinkedIn or Instagram, or you can go to my website, consultingbyprime.com, consultingbyprime.com.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to just finish off with for anybody who might be struggling out there?
Yeah, I thought the bit that we spent on finding your why is so important. One of the biggest things I did, Daniel, was I had to come to terms a few years ago, and it was definitely not my nature that I wanted to live in reality. The truth is, as much as it sucks to admit, we're all going to go through pain. We're all going to go through hardship. We're all going to experience rejection, life, relationships, business. It's what we do with that, and it's how we respond to that, what our perspective will be that allows us to keep moving forward. And so to me, finding your why and going 5 layers deep, finding the emotional catalyst, that's how you navigate hardship. That's how you navigate rejection. It's how you navigate fear. All these things aren't going away. It's life. We're going to get hurt and things are going to happen, but our ability to navigate them is often going to be predicated by how stressful it is. So if you're struggling, if you're going through a hard time, business, creativity, and the like, not your why.
That's awesome, man. Great chatting to you. And thanks so much for all your insights.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
There you go, guys. Honest ratings for the show on Apple are appreciated. If you have a guest suggestion, please feel free to reach out on my website at danielthomas.co. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.